And record. Okay, so welcome to Sculling School, the start. Not to be confused with the start of Sculling School. This is about racing starts. And the great thing about racing starts is they are wonderfully technical. Even if you don't really plan on doing racing starts, side-by-side regattas in a scull, you should. It's tremendous fun. But even if you don't plan on doing it, they can teach you a huge amount about how to make the boat go faster, which is kind of what we're here for. So, just to recap for those here and those listening on recording who might not know the basic Cantab start. Okay, I have split the wind and the lengthen up. Not all of our crews do that, but they are two different phases that teach two different things. So for the purposes of learning, we are doing a wind and a lengthen. So we do 3 draw strokes. Usually you end up doing 1 at 3/4 slide, 1 at half slide, 1 at 3/4 slide, and not much body rock. That's what we teach about draw strokes, are just push with the legs. The wind strokes are as we build up the rating. We're still not at full length while we're doing that. The lengthened strokes are when we've hit max rating and start putting the length on. We have a power 10 just for fun. And then there's the stride, which is where we take the rating down. Okay, just so we've all got the same terminology: draw, wind, lengthen, power, and stride. And each of these phases can teach us something. So we shall go through them. So starts are a good drill. Even if you're not racing, they teach you all of these things. They teach you the changes of slide length that we just saw in the draw strokes. They teach you about separation, about keeping your legs and body separated. They teach you about suspension, about how to hang off the handle even when the rating is high, even when the speed is low. They teach you how to make the boat go faster, like that. They teach you how to control your rating, how to make it go up and down at an appropriate rate and at an appropriate time. And they teach you connection, which is that feeling of getting the blade locked into the water, of really feeling the force going through and being able to propel the boat. This connection gets used in many ways, but I will try and explain the details behind what coaches mean when they say connection. It always helps to understand the technical meaning behind the feeling we're trying to convey. Okay. Starts are technical. We will go through things like the angle the blade is at and what difference that makes. Blade slip through the water, or rip, or coaches use different words for it, but we'll explain that. We'll talk about rating. We'll talk about ratio. That's the ratio of drive to slide, how quickly your body is rocking relative to the speed of the boat. Obviously, the boat's going to speed up and the rating is going to change as we go through the start. So ratio suddenly becomes interesting, not just something the coach shouts at you when you're rushing the slide. And we will try and put some technical words around this grip or connection or building puddles. And my autocorrect has accidentally come up with a great term for this, because it really doesn't like the word puddle the way I type it. Okay. Regardless, this is about how we make the boat accelerate through the water. Point at the bottom. All these points apply even when we're setting off at light pressure. Okay, as the boat accelerates, no matter how hard we want it to accelerate, we're going to see these things change as the boat speeds up. It's all interrelated. Right. I told you my autocorrect struggled with puddles, so we are building poodles. We are generating poodles through the water. When we're sending a puddle away and coaches are complimenting us on our puddles, This is fundamentally what we push against to move the boat. It is a blob, for want of a better word, of high pressure water that builds up in front of the blades. It doesn't move through the water, or it shouldn't. Ideally, we want the blade to stay basically locked in position and the boat to lever past the blade, this being how we accelerate it. If that puddle breaks up and gets turbulent, we don't have anything stable to push against. We have squashed the poodle. We don't want to stir it up, so we want to keep it stable. If you look at the diagram, what we see is that at the catch, the blade is actually quite at an angle to the direction the water's going. Okay. Stands to reason as that drops in and pushes water sideways away from the boat, it's not going to be pushing the boat directly forwards, and it's not going to be building that puddle anywhere near as effectively as it could be. The most efficient point in terms of making that poodle go towards the stern is the 0 line there, when the blade is perpendicular to the boat. There is no chance of the puddle rolling off the blade one way or another. Anything you do there is all drive. That comes in just about 3/4 slide, just as the legs have finished their drive and the body is rocking back. There's a reason we focus on how that's the powerful bit of the stroke, how to engage your glutes, how to make the back end of the stroke work. It's because it's more efficient than trying to do it all at the front. Okay. Just because I like to credit my diagrams where I get them, this one has been borrowed from the people who do the M-Power Oarlock, which will actually measure this stuff for you in real time, record it for analysis later. Costs an absolute fortune, but if you really want to know, you can find out. Boom. There you have a demonstration of what I'm talking about, of the blade moving through the water. You can see that as it enters the water, it's actually sliding to the right of the diagram towards the bows of the boat. It's not until it's done a couple of ticks, has gone a bit further out, that it really locks in and it really stops moving, and it really gives you that lock in, that connection that you can really push against. You can get the connection right at the front where it is now, but by far and away the most efficient bit is as it comes towards the end here. All right. Again, this is Concept 2's work on blades. They do a lot of work on how to make the blade hang on to this poodle as effectively as possible, how to make it generate this lump of high pressure water and hang on to it. There's all manner of fun little adjustments to the blade, and some blades have the little ridges on the outside edge, which are supposed to promote a more cohesive blob of puddle. Which bits of it work or not, I'm not entirely sure. It's percentages, but fundamentally it's all trying to do the same thing. It's trying to build that big bucket of water, build that puddle. I have here a video demonstrating this point, in case this looks a little bit counterintuitive, in case it feels obvious that, of course, you must be pushing water backwards. Yeah, a little bit, but water is heavy. You're not going to move the cam anywhere near as much as you're going to move your single. And this is how little the blade moves. Okay. It's quite a good video in general, but I've just got the entertaining bit here. Just give me a thumbs up if you can see this video.
Can't hear him then.
He's talking about planting the blade in the water as though there's a peg there. You're trying to hook a blade around the peg and lever it past the peg. He's imagining a set of pegs moving through placed in the water for you to hook the boat and throw it through. As we saw, that's not 100% how it works, but it's a great way to think about it. You can watch him doing it here. Locks in. Boom. And he's dropping that blade in quite quickly. He's getting the lock in reasonably good. This guy is talking about the 40 years of experience he has of practicing the catch here. And he's thinking about dropping that blade in as though he's trying to hook it into a peg and then send the boat away, levering off the peg. Watch his right-hand blade, video left. He is looking over his left shoulder, which is not a good idea. He should be checking both shoulders. Boom. See that? He had no idea that was coming, but he almost perfectly swept past it, dropped the blade in, and didn't even notice he did it. Boom. Because the blade didn't move through the water at all. Once he got locked in, once he found that connection, once he built that puddle, the blade does not move towards the buoy. If it did, he'd have caught a monumental crab trying to tap down. He did notice the ball when he paddled past it, but had no idea he'd done this until he got back and edited the video, which is quite cool. Right. Back to this. So we've established that it's all about that grip. Okay, it's all about getting this puddle built up. But there is a limit on this. And this was nowhere is this more apparent than the first stroke of a racing start. You can squash the poodle. You can put enough power in that the water, that bubble of water starts to break down. At which point, the diagram we saw here of the red dots of the tip of the blade completely fails to apply. You do push the oar through the water instead of the boat, and you go an awful lot slower as a result. So this is what we're trying to avoid the feeling of. Right? We want to build that poodle, not rip the blade straight through it. I will skip down to the bottom. This is one thing where you can't look at the top guys and go, oh, well, they're just better than us. The laws of physics are the same for them as for everyone else. Water is as wet as it gets all the world over, and we do all use basically the same size of blades. You can get slightly smaller blades for juniors, but broadly it's limited for reasons I won't bother going into here, such that we all basically use the same size. We build the same size of puddle, which means if you're ripping the water, that's entirely down to technique. Okay. At the first stroke is the place to play with it. Okay, assuming you've got the confidence in your boat to do some front stops drills, you can play around at the front, go right forward to front stops when you're stationary, and then try to do a really powerful stroke. You will find, if you actually get the confidence to really boot it, that you can break the water down, and you will send a big frothy puddle forward as you've stirred it up. Cavitated it is the technical term, as you've stirred that water up. It looks impressive and big and splashy. The tap down will have foam going everywhere, but it won't go as fast. If I've coached you at all wanting you to build confidence, I have told you to do pushback drills. You will start at half slide or 3/4 slide with the blades in the water. Push away so you're backing down, and when you get to front stops, you will lock into the water and put the power on. That amplifies the rip the water feeling, because you now have to stop yourself going backwards and start yourself going forwards. Boat forwards and backwards, not rower forwards and backwards, which means there'll be even more force and it'll be even easier to break that poor poodle. Okay? That is a really useful way to find the feeling about the theory that I'm talking about here. The water only has so much load it can take, and this is a lot to do with why we shape starts the way that we do. I mentioned there that you can cheat on a stake boat start, and this is kind of a fun one to practice. If you're doing a regatta start on a stake boat, it is anchored fairly securely. It won't move. Okay, and your bows will be up against it, being held by a very bored volunteer. Sorry, your stern will be up against it, held by a very bored volunteer who will just let it go as soon as you start. What you can do here is a little miniature pushback drill. Requires a little bit of timing, but as the starter says, attention, you push back slightly. Doesn't go anywhere, but what it does is builds a little bit of negative, of low pressure in front of your blade, where you want to build the puddle. Just as he's about to say go, you can connect with the water. That lump of low pressure you created by backing down disappears, and you can start to connect, find that grip with the water. You are relying on him not pausing too long for the go, but you've got maybe a quarter of a second where you can be connected and starting to accelerate, starting to build the puddle, but not yet accelerate the boat and whip it out of the starter's hands and get yourself done for a false start. It's a tricky one to get right in a regatta, but it's a great one to practice just for that feeling of a little push back, a little bit of connection, of building the puddle, and then accelerating the boat. Okay. That's a key thing to think of here. You have to build the puddle before the boat will accelerate. Right. So we've taken the first of our draw strokes. Obviously, we want to do more of this. We want to keep going faster. When we did our first draw stroke, we were at maybe half or three-quarter length slide. We weren't all the way forward, because if we did that, our blade was going to be angled right out behind us. We were not going to build that poodle. Okay, same applies for the remaining strokes. If we have too much, if we lean too far forward, we rotate too far, we don't get the puddle for the stroke. We don't get the drive all the way through. When we're slow, less length is better. Counterintuitively, we'll get to that. But the second stroke is half slide, so that we're making the most of that efficient bit of stroke as we accelerate. As the boat speeds up, we've got less trouble with the massive amount of force we're applying at the front end. Okay, we're not putting as much force on, we're not as worried about the poodle, so we can start laying a bit more power on, and we can start coming forward a little bit more. So the third stroke, typically, we go back to three-quarter slide. All right? So three-quarters, half, three-quarters. So relatively standard. If we are putting as much force as the puddle will bear all the way through the stroke, how are we going to make our start faster still? Well, if we can't put any more power down, we're just going to have to take faster strokes. If we get those 3 strokes done a little bit quicker, the boat will be going a little bit quicker. If we want to take faster strokes, it will help if they're shorter. Given that we can't go long anyway at the start because that poor poodle, actually keeping the strokes nice and short is a good thing. So we can get 3 nice quick strokes, bang, bang, bang. And you should now be wondering how on earth the coach is telling you that you should be taking shorter strokes. Moving on. Or at least you should be thinking about that. So, we have now got to the point where if we keep our strokes nice and short, the puddle's not limiting us. If we lean all the way forward, we'll probably still have a problem. Okay, we want the boat to go faster. We want the rating to go higher. Everyone loves chest bumping about how high they can make their rating off the start. There's kind of a reason for that. Rating gets higher, taking more strokes per second, boat speed gets higher. It's not a bad thing. We have to ask why we don't all rate off the start at 50 or 60 or 70. That's because the crew, even in a single, the crew has a limit to how fast it can come back up the slide. Not rating so much as recovery. There's only so fast you can get from back stops to front stops. The drive is actually fairly defined. It will depend on how fast the boat is moving. It has to, unless you're ripping the blade through the water. If you are rowing at 3/4 slide, and we're still 3/4 slide here, you will, where was I? Yeah, if you're still at 3/4 slide, your drive will just depend on how fast the boat is going. So what limits us here is ratio. Okay, drive is relatively fixed, so our maximum rating is determined by how fast we can rock forward. Generally, what you find, looking at the graph, which is totally made up, but an accurate representation of what happens. As you build the rating, as you're taking more strokes per minute, the speed builds. You get more efficient in terms of how you're putting the power down, how you're making the boat continue to tap through the water. I've covered this in another presentation, I believe. At some point, and it tends to be quite quick, you can no longer control yourself up and down the slide. If it's a crew boat, the crew gets out of sync. If it's a single, you start struggling at the back, struggling at the front, struggling to get the blades out of the water. Boat speed pretty quickly falls off a cliff. So really what we're wanting to do is to find that rating, that optimum rating. Find that, or well, no, we want to find that slide speed, that recovery speed, and that wants to be constant. That wants to be about as quick as the crew can manage. Remember, we're only doing this for 5 strokes. As the boat speeds up, the drive gets faster. As the drive gets faster, but the ratio stays the same, but the recovery stays the same, then our ratio can drop. So our rating will naturally build as the boat speed increases. So the boat is still accelerating all the way through these wind strokes. Okay. Boat speed determines the rating we can hold at a given stroke length. This again is something you can play with on your own as you accelerate away, put a bit of power on, and naturally, if you just keep the same smooth rock forward, your rating will speed up. If you've got a little rate meter, it does help to figure this out. So we've done our draw strokes, we've done our wind strokes. We're now not squashing the puddle anymore. We're not at risk of ripping the water, unless you've got colossal amounts of power. And we've hit our optimum rating. Wonderful, we have done a beautiful start. Except we're not at maximum yet. Okay. We're still at 3/4 slide, and we're still not really rocking the body. Why were we doing that again? Why were we still short? Because we were worried about about squashing the poodle. Not a problem anymore. Now, I just told you short strokes are efficient, but also long strokes are efficient. Rowing is all about the trade-offs. Short strokes are efficient in terms of blade efficiency, in terms of locking into the water, not stirring that puddle up. Long strokes are more efficient because you're getting as much work as you can out of each stroke. Okay, the recovery costs you effort. Rocking forward, flinging yourself up the slide does cost effort. But, you know, it's muscular effort. It's extra things that you have to do. So you want to keep the rating low and the stroke length long for the point of view of your poor battered body. Right? So all the way through this, we've been balancing these two things. We want to make the maximum efficiency from the blades. Now we've stopped worrying about the blades. Now the poodle can take as much force as we can bear. We want the strokes to lengthen out again. Okay. Assuming we want to continue getting faster, that is the only way we can get faster. We need more length while keeping that rating. We still want that body rock forward to be as quick as possible. We want to be taking as many strokes as we can in a given time. Possible wrinkle here. And you've already seen it if you're reading the slides. Part of the problem with getting the maximum speed on the recovery is getting the bodies rocking backwards and forwards and keeping the stability as you come into front stops. As we lengthen out, as we start rocking back and reaching forward, that starts getting harder. What we find in the lengthened strokes is that the boat keeps accelerating, which in theory lets us get more rating, as we discussed in the wind strokes. But also it gets harder to control yourself backwards and forwards on the slide. So generally the rating will stay constant, the boat speed will climb, the length will climb. So all interlinked. Length interacts with rating, interacts with boat speed. And again, here we're playing rating for length, trying to get to something that we might be able to sustain for the whole bumps course. Okay. In a single, it's about controlling yourself into front stops and not making a horrific check at the catch. In a crew boat, it's even harder because we're talking about controlling everyone into front stops at the same time, everyone rocking forward at the same time. Tricky. Lot of coaching comes around getting that rock backwards and forwards together. So trying to do it at rate 40 in a race, really tricky. Okay. So we're done. We're at full length. We're at full speed. Yep. Maximum rating we can manage. Maximum length we can manage. Great. How can we possibly lose? Final trade-off. And this is through the power strokes, which, in all honesty, in the start, the power strokes are really just to try and get a bit of a gap on the people in front. This is just racing. This is no longer technical. You're burning the gas in the tank a little bit early to try and make sure you put the other crew under pressure. That's more or less what it is. By that point, you shouldn't really be accelerating. But this is not a sustainable speed. This is pretty much boat maximum speed. This is the maximum rating your crew can hold together for a short distance, which, as we establish, makes the boat go faster. The dilemma here, if you slow down the boat, you're making the drive longer, which is going to affect that ratio, which means you're going to have to drop the rating when the boat speed drops. Right? Which means the Cox has a dilemma, because when they call that stride, When they call the rating down from 32 to 28 or 40 to 35 or whatever your crew is capable of, the boat is going to slow down. And the gap to the crew in front is going to increase. If they don't call that rating down, you're not going to be able to sustain the boat speed you need to sustain the rating. This is where bumps crews look at their very, very most pained, is when they don't quite have the power to sustain the rating they're being asked for. They start rushing up the slide, they start rowing short. Basically, any cheat they can find to make that ratio a little less painful. Right. So that's the final trade-off. Boat speed gives you rating, which gives you speed. If you ask for the rating to come down, the speed comes down, but you're going to have to do that at some point, or your fitness is going to disappear. Okay. So, to sum all the trade-offs up, we've seen throughout the stroke, the catch out, also throughout the start, the catch angle was changing. Right up until the end of the lengthen strokes, we were doing different stroke lengths. Okay, less catch angle gives us less slip, gives us more efficient strokes. The stroke length has been changing to match the stroke angle. If we shorten the stroke, it improves our ratio, which is great. That lets us get the high rating that we want. But it doesn't help our DPS, distance per stroke. I could do a whole session on DPS. If we can change our ratio, we can change our rating. We can rate higher if we've got the time to come forward, or if our stroke is shorter, but we might not be in control when we get to the finish. We can make the rating go up. We can make the boat speed go up. We can win. Amazing. But we possibly can't sustain it. And just to go right back around again, the faster the boat goes, the less force you're putting on at the start, the less risk there is of squashing that poodle, the less slip you've got. Okay? And all of these change throughout the draw, mostly about slip, through the wind, which is where we build up the rating, through the lengthen, which is where we start trading that catch angle back for length, and through the power, which is all about boat speed. And then again on the stride, when we sacrifice some rating and some boat speed for actually being able to finish the race. Or maybe we don't. This is the permanent Cox's dilemma in bumps. Do you keep that high rating and that high boat speed, and the rating that allows you to keep the boat speed and the boat speed that allows you to keep the rating, and risk blowing your crew to tiny little pieces after 200 meters? Or do you stride down and hope the other crews stride as well? Horrible decision to make. But all of these things change dynamically, stroke by stroke. They can change tactically. It's not unknown if you have a big crab for the to do a rolling start to get the boat back up to speed. 3 draw strokes, 5 wind, power 10. Because you've lost speed and you need to regain speed, but you don't want to rip the water. So exactly the same thing applies. Okay. I have, if the crew has really wanted to, really not been able to get a rating together, called for 5 draw strokes at 3/4 slide, just to shake them up, just to make the ratio change, the length change, and just to get them all together again when they lengthen out. That's a coxing decision rather than a coaching decision. But the crucial thing at the bottom of this, if you're rowing in a single, all of these things change when you want them to. You are in a position, or even in a double if you're reasonably good at communicating and willing to play around, you can play with draw strokes. you can absolutely paddle down the river at 3/4 slide, just feeling the difference at the front end in terms of this trade-off, in terms of this slip versus length. You can absolutely rate as high as you possibly can at half slide, so you can feel this control of the ratio versus the length and see what it does to boat speed. You know, the singles and doubles are where you can really play with what this does to the feel and the run of the boat. So if you want to sit there and just do single strokes trying to stir the water up as much as possible, that's a great feel drill. If you want to shorten your stroke to ridiculous degrees, that'll teach you a lot about the feel of the blade slip and the ratio. So I will absolutely get crews to do the 3 draw, 5 wind, 5 lengthen, power 10 at half pressure just for this feel. Look out for it. Okay. That is all the slides. I have run slightly shorter than usual this time. I believe Catherine may be dropping off, so I guess I can ask if anyone got any questions.
It's useful. I mean, actually, it shows me some of the things we need to play with on our particularly the racing start elements of that, because we've been doing the tap downs into the first stroke, so actually doing tap down from back stops all the way up to front stops, and then one big power stroke to get that feel of the engagement at the very end, which is a similar sort of
Yeah, that's a great drill for hand heights and balance and control. But yeah, the one big stroke at the end is a very different thing to the hand height tapping forward. Both good drills, but I am quite keen on focusing on what makes the boat go faster. How does getting that drive through the water feel when you get it right or wrong?
Yeah.
And yeah, you obviously can't have the boat completely doofed down on one side, but no one ever won a race by doing a cutting the cake drill midway through it.
Yeah, it's interesting watching that guy of just how far back he gets the blades as well, the catch and that.
Yeah.
How does he know when?
Sorry, go ahead.
How does he know how far forward is the right amount far forward? And is there a trade-off in that? Is there a, because as you say, if the catch angle's sort of right back, you don't get the most pressure. But you also get more distance per stroke, presumably, because whatever you get across is whatever you get.
So the answer is it's as far forward as you can without completely losing body position. There's no point with the blades being in the water and you not being able to build the puddle, which is what happens if you start lunging your shoulders forward and hunching your back, because the first thing you have to do to get any meaningful power down is sit back up and sort your back out and sort your shoulders out. So overreaching for length doesn't help.
Yeah.
If you can be stable with a ridiculous reach forward and the blades out almost at 90 degrees to the boat, parallel to the boat, that's fine. That's enough.
Yeah, it's the flexibility for that that's the tricky part.
The good crews are really very flexible.
Yeah. But actually, it was I was struck by the practicing doing the winds and the power, the stride sections, because it's the shortened stroke ratio feel that I think we don't really do very much of at the moment. So
that's where you really start to learn the momentum in the boat and the changes of direction you need at each end when the rating starts to build and the boat speed starts to build. You start really figuring out why you need to turn around so quickly at each end.
I mean, the ratio thing is always a challenge because of the pulling, the temptation to pull yourself up the slide, which I'm constantly trying to work out at what point do I start doing that because we don't go particularly fast. But it's but the rating, we don't do a particularly high rating, but you are still conscious that sometimes you end up pulling yourself forward. But, yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that classically is one of the things that limits the recovery, the ratio, is not hauling the boat up to yourself by the hamstrings.
Yeah. Does the recovery, the return bit get dictated by the boat speed? As in, if you're supposed to be doing that, effectively allow the boat to move under you, does a higher speed mean you can effectively do a quicker recovery then, presumably, because the boat's moving faster underneath you? Less tempted to pull yourself up?
Not, I mean, it's all about your movement relative to the boat. So the moving at the speed of the boat is kind of a way to stop people flinging themselves up the slide. It's a it's a coach's mind trick rather than anything related to physics.
You feel you're supposed to feel like the boat's moving under you rather than you sort of hauling it forward.
I always teach it that you should really start it out with the rock forward and the hands away to start yourself traveling up the slide, but there shouldn't be pulling with the hamstrings and on the toes to accelerate you even faster up the slide. So you get the rock away done, you can have a brief bit of actual recovering on your recovery, and then it's time to square the blades and get them in.
That's good.
Cool.
I'll have a practice. Although it's rolling start on Sunday, so Saturday. I don't think we'll do especially good speed either.
Well, first time back for ages, then you just get round the course. Save a bit to push it at the finish, but it's not going to be epic.
It's for fun.
It'll be great fun.
It will be. Excellent.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Good luck in the Christmas head. If I can, I'll get out and give you a shout.
I think we're going to go out for practice on Wednesday as well, so we're going to
probably for the best.
Trying to remember how to row. Great.
Cool. Right, I shall get all this lot put up. So thanks very much.
Cheers. Have a good rest of your evening.
See you anon.
Yeah.